Yata, exactly like. Darumayim, made of wood. Nara, a man. Striyam, a doll. Translation and purport was Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear Lord, just as a puppeteer controls his dancing dolls and a husband controls his wife, your Lordship controls all the living entities in the universe, such as the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Although you are in everyone's heart as the supreme witness and commander and are outside everyone as well, the so-called leaders of societies, communities, and countries cannot realize you. Only those who hear the vibration of the Vedic mantras can appreciate you. Purport. Supreme Personality of Godhead is Antarbahi, present within and without everything. One must overcome the delusion caused by the Lord's external energy and realize his presence both externally and internally. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1.8.19, Srimati Kunti Devi has explained that Krishna appears in this world nato natya dharu yata, exactly like an actor dressed as a player. In Bhagavad Gita 18.61, Krishna says, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshi durjuna tishtati. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna. The Lord is situated within everyone's heart, outside as well. Within the heart, he is the super soul, the incarnation who acts as the advisor and witness. Yet, although God is residing within their hearts, foolish people say, I cannot see God. Please show him to me. Everyone is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, exactly like dancing dolls controlled by a puppeteer or a woman controlled by her husband. A woman is compared to a doll, Darumani, because she has no independence. She should always be controlled by a man. Still, due to false prestige, a class of women want to remain independent. What to speak of women, all living entities are prakriti, female, and therefore dependent on the Supreme Lord. As Krishna himself explains in Bhagavad Gita, Aparayam itwastvanyam prakritim vidime param. The living entity is never independent. Under all circumstances, he is dependent on the mercy of the Lord. The Lord creates the social divisions of human society, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, and ordains that they follow rules and regulations suited to their particular position. In this way, all members of society remain always under the Supreme Lord's control. Still, some people foolishly deny the existence of God. Self-realization means to understand one's subordinate position in relation to the Lord. When one is thus enlightened, he surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is liberated from the clutches of the material energy. In other words, unless one surrenders to the lotus feet of the Lord, the material energy and its many varieties will continue to control him. No one in the material world can deny that he is under control. The Supreme Lord, Narayan, who is beyond this material existence, controls everyone. The following Vedic mantra confirms this point. Eko ha bhaya narayana ashit. Follow foolish persons like Narayana. Foolish persons think Narayana to be on the platform of ordinary material existence because they do not realize the natural constitutional position of the living entity. They concoct names like Darid Narayana, Swami Narayana, or Mithya Narayana. However, Narayana is actually the supreme controller of everyone. This understanding is self-realization. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnanangana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we continue hearing the prayers of the residents of Jambudweep. What astounds me when first reading this translation in purport is that it's relayed here that Krishna is Antarbahi. He is within and without of everything. As we know, Krishna pervades everything in existence through his different energies. He's within the atom, outside the atom, in between every atom. How is it that the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be detected? That is a great mystery. We hear Krishna is in everything and everyone, within and without. But how is it that we cannot see Krishna with our eyes? This remains a great mystery for atheists and materialistic individuals when they try to access the Bhagavad Gita, when they try to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they do so under their own terms. Srila Prabhupada explains in the Krishna book that Krishna doesn't have the defect of impersonalism. Krishna is responsive because he's a person. So therefore, we need to understand Krishna, see Krishna, according to Krishna's means and ways and desire. As he explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavanyashtasmithatvatha chappadhyam punajna eti mam eti. So Arjuna, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood and can be seen directly before you. In this way, you can enter into the mysteries of my understanding. So Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna indeed is a great mystery because one has to execute practically the process of devotional service in order to perceive the Lord everywhere. Prabhupada gives the example in the Bhagavad Gita, unless you apply yourself in Krishna consciousness, paraphrasing, you cannot actually access or understand Krishna. The example given is that if you lick the bottle of honey, you'll never taste the sweetness of the honey. You have to open the lid and stick your tongue inside the bottle in order to understand the sweetness of the substance contained within the jar. So similarly, to understand Krishna, to penetrate through Krishna's mysteries, we have to execute pure, unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, there are so many scholars in modern society who've tried to understand Bhagavad Gita under their own pretext, under their own speculation. They never access or understand the essence of the Bhagavad Gita because they're trying to understand Bhagavad Gita or Krishna by their own limited means. So it requires one, humility, surrender, and devotion in order to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Premanjana turita bhakti vilochanena shantashadhaiva hridayesha vilokayanti yam shama shundaram achincha gunasarupam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Lord Brahma states that he worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, who is Shama Sundar, Krishna himself, replete with all attributes of the Supreme Lord, who can only be seen by the eyes tinged with the salve of love of God. So therefore, there's the qualification by which we can see Krishna everywhere and everything. If we don't love Krishna, or we don't try to make progress in trying to love the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna has the right, reserves the right to not be seen, just like you reserve the right not to be understood or reveal yourself to anyone that there's no trust. So Krishna as a Supreme Person wants to see, do I trust this individual? Therefore he says, Naham pakasha rasha yogo maya savavita mudhoyam navijanati loko mama jamavyayam. He has the right to reserve himself with his own yoga maya potency. He covers himself over to those mudhas, those foolish people. Therefore they cannot understand him. Therefore Krishna as the Supreme Person is independent. He can choose who he reveals himself to anyone if he wants to. And we might have a real struggle with this because it means that I'm not in control. This is another factor that the residents of Jambudweep are trying to declare in this particular prayer. Oh, my Lord, all living entities are under your control. Quality number 50 of Krishna in the Nectar of Devotion is that he is the controller. There in Rupa Goswami or Srila Prabhupada explains there's two kinds of controllers. One who is, number one, independent. Number two, one whose orders cannot be overruled. Then one is constituted as a controller. So Krishna, as we know, is Janmariya Satonayat Itiratas Tateshta Bhigya Swarat. He is Swarat. He is the supremely independent cause of all causes of all manifestations in this world. Because he's independent, he is the supreme controller. And no one can overrule his judgments, his orders. In the Nectar of Devotion, it's explained, a discussion between Uddhava to Vidura, that just by Krishna's orders, Lord Brahma creates. Just by Krishna's orders, Lord Shiva dissolves this universe. Just by his partial expansion as Vishnu, he maintains everything in this universe. So therefore, Krishna is the supreme controller. This creates a little bit of a crisis for the conditioned soul, because then we realize that we're not Krishna. And the recourse is that subsequently then we have to become dependent on the Lord. Because if we understand that we're not the controller, that means we're dependent on something. We're a little bit like controllers because we are parts of Krishna. We are Ishvaras in one sense that we can control in a limited extent. The housewife is to control the kitchen, to make preparations for the family. If you're a manager, you have to control people in such a way, to organize people in such a way so things function efficiently, so on and so forth. We have a little bit of tiny control with the things around us, but we're not the supreme controllers. That's the point. And that's a really hard thing to swallow for the conditioned soul. You're not completely independent. You're not totally independent. It means that you're dependent. It feels a little bit uncomfortable when you actually think about it. I'm dependent. You're always, it's no one likes to be dependent on anyone else, especially in Kali Yuga, Can you actually resolve within your own mind that I'm dependent on anyone? No, everyone wants to feel like I'm independent, self-righteous, self-verifying individual unit, especially Western, in the Western world. Everyone wants to be their self-defining, self-verifying independent unit. So it's a real hard principle to swallow when we understand that Krishna is the supreme control. But as we make sincere progress in our Krishna consciousness, Krishna makes it very clear that we're not in control. We see this even in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It doesn't matter how expert you are. This is, I think, in the 8th chapter where Srila Prabhupada explains, in spite of the power of pious activities, in spite of the power of personalities, in spite of the power of expertise in management, in spite of the power of weaponry, and they themselves, the Pandavas, were actually guided by God himself, still had to suffer so many reversals within their life. And Srila Prabhupada explains this is only due to the influence of Kala, time. Kalosmi lokakshakrit vido, time I am, the destroyer of the worlds. If Krishna wants us to undergo certain experiences in our devotional life, we have to undergo them with gratitude, with the idea that these are things meant for us, specifically for us to learn and grow in Krishna consciousness. So it doesn't matter how expert. The Pandavas were extremely expert. Yudhishthira was practically the Dharma personified. And Krishna was there with them the whole time, but still they had to suffer so many reversals. The suffering, in one sense, in another perspective, the suffering we experience in this world is just due to our attachments not being aligned to the will of the Lord. We have attachments to certain things. We have attachments to what we want to be, how we want to be seen, what we want to do in this world. But if it doesn't align with Krishna's will, then we have to suffer. Because ultimately Krishna has a plan for every single one of us for our own purification. So this is all part of becoming a devotee. Srila Prabhupada explains, to become pure means one has to be natural. Just like there to be pure water, it has to have no sediments. It has to be in its natural state. So I think at Bhagavad Gita 9:30 in the purport, it says that in the natural state, actually everyone is a devotee. In the purified natural state, everyone is a devotee. So everyone has to go through this process of purification as we engage in Krishna consciousness to realign ourselves with the will of the Lord. And it can be a painful process according to what our attachments are. So we have to understand that these are fundamental points for our peace of mind. If we want peace of mind in Krishna consciousness, we hear Bhaktaram Yagdatapasam Sarva Lokam Maheshwaram Suradam Sarva Bhutanam Gyatva Mam Shantim Richati. Krishna is the enjoyer of all sacrifices, the Lord of all the planets and demigods. Suradam Sarva Bhutanam, he is the friend and well-wisher of all living entities. This is a real tough one for some people to understand. You know, why I can't get along with everyone? It's not your position. You're not God. That's just the way it is. Actually, people want to make friends with every living. That's God's position. Sometimes we just have to make respectable distances with other living entities due to differences. And Jatpamam Shantim Richati. If you understand these points, then you can become peaceful. So you're not the controller and you're not independent. This is what I'm getting from this translation and purport, which is really running home. Srila Prabhupada quotes Srimati Kunti Devi in her prayers. And I just read Kunti Devi's prayers in the first canto, doing Bhakti Vaibhav first canto. And the whole thing is just such an incredible expression of dependency on Krishna. Such a beautiful expression in my Lord. Basically, she's trying to convince Krishna not to leave Hastinapur, because if you leave Hastinapur, everything is going to go to hell. It's only because of you that we're here. It's only because of you that we become successful. It's only because of you that Yudhishthira is enthroned the emperor of the world. It's only because of you that we have all this success. And if you leave us, my dear Lord, oh my God, what will happen? Therefore, please remain in Hastinapur. In essence, we're dependent. We're so dependent on your mercy. So this dependency of the Lord, of the devotee on the Lord, is very, very beautiful, actually. It's our natural position to be dependent. Like Srila Prabhupada would say, when you're chanting the holy name, you should be crying out like a child depends on the mother. That's your natural position, to be crying out, oh, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. It sounds like suffering. But actually, when you observe children and you see how dependent they are with their parents, they're actually always peaceful. They're peaceful because they know that God is going to be the protector and maintainer. There's no neuroses. Mom and dad will feed me. Mom and dad will give me shelter. Mom and dad will give me consolation and respite. Mom and dad will protect me. So in that way, the child is actually, I remember as a child, it didn't matter. It was just like, mom and dad will take me to the mall. They'll take me here. They'll take me there. It's just like, you're peaceful because you know that you are being protected and maintained. And these are part of the 6 symptoms of Sharanagati, as described in Hari Bhakti Vilas, and also as Rupa Goswami explains in Nectar of Devotion. Anukulyena Krishna Anuchilan. Oh, so what's this verse? Okay. Anukulyasya sankalpa patikulyasya varjanam rakshasya tita vishvaso goprithivanam tata atmanikshapa karpanye sat vida sharanagati. So Vishwanath Chakravarti explains that the first 4 symptoms of surrender is to do with one's behavior and faith. So it's very easy to observe when someone is accepting things that is favorable for your Krishna consciousness and rejecting things that is unfavorable. You can see this in someone's conduct and their behavior. It's very readily observable. The next 2 is not as observable because it is dependent on the faith of the Vaishnava. Krishna is my protector. Krishna is my maintainer. Rakshasatiti Vishvaso Gopitevaranam Tata. You can see many examples of this in the Bhagavatam, like Prahlad Maharaj. He never flinched, even though so many challenges were there in his life with his relationship with his father, Hiranyakashipu, Rantidev, so many kings. They're always dependent. Krishna is my protector. The Pandavas, Krishna is my protector. He is my maintainer. What does it mean that Krishna is my maintainer? Gopite varanam tata. Srila Prabhupada explains in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which I just picked up a couple of days. By the way, my Guru Maharaj is glorifying this book like anything. I just picked it up after maybe 3 years. I just read the first 60 pages. I was just blown away by this book. Such an incredible book. It's like, you have Krishna book is the summarized version of the 10th canto. Then you have Nectar Devotion, the summary of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So teachings of Lord Chaitanya is like the summary of the essence of Shastra, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, all in this tiny little book. There's so much Shakti. And anyway, Prabhupada talks about how he actually he unpacks the 6 symptoms of surrender just in the preface. And I was reading, this is amazing. And he explains, Gopet te varanam tata, his meaning is that one is completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. Completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. And then Atmanik Shepakar Panye, humility and full surrender, or Atma Nivedana, full surrender. He unpacks as having no separate, paraphrasing, having no separate motivation except the will of the will of the Lord. Having complete alignment with the will of the Supreme Personality. Having no separate self-interest, that was it. The devotee has no separate self-interest to the will of God. That is as regarded as Atmanik Shepa, full surrender. As exhibited by Bali Maharaj, he gave everything to Krishna. By your will, you want everything, take everything. I can't change anything. I'm not the supreme controller. Sometimes we may have this experience in our devotional career where we try and manage the things around us so efficiently, but still something goes wrong. Something that you can't control. There's an external force is there, some unseen impediment. And then you realize, actually, it doesn't matter how much I try and control the situation and circumstance around me, God is the supreme controller. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada explains in the 8th chapter of the 1st canto that actually that there's no point lamenting over matters which you cannot control. Because ultimately we have to conform with the will of the Lord, with the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in this song in the Sharanagati, Mara bira kabiyo icha tuhara, nitya dasa pratituva adhikara. The psychology of this Sharanagati, kill me or protect me, it doesn't matter. Krishna, I am yours as you wish. You have full rights over my whole existence. I am your eternal servant. So the first 2 symptoms of Sharanagati is most readily observable. It applies to one's conduct and behavior. The second is according to one's faith. And the last 2, Atmanik Shepa, Atma Nivedana, or humility, specifically deals with the identity of the devotee in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And it's also explained in the previous acharyas that Gopvatevaranam Tata Rakshishiti Vishvasho, it's like a gateway to full surrender. We have to go through this idea of understanding that we are dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead to get the crowning symptom of Sharanagati, which is Atma Nivedana, Atmanik Shepa. So one has to practice this dependence on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And one devotee can put themselves in circumstances and situation where they can feel like they're not in control. It's a very refreshing situation when you know, oh my God, like if anyone does book distribution, for those who have done book distribution, you like, do you feel like you're in control? Like throughout the year, I'm thinking, I'll do 3 or 4 or 5 hours throughout the week, a day per week. And I'm just thinking my conditioned mentality is like, okay, I'll just bring like 10 Maha big books because I know I can do 10 Maha big books. It's like, you can control the circumstance in that situation because that's all I can do, Krishna. But like this previous marathon, I was explaining to devotees a few weeks ago that, I put myself in a situation where I know without Krishna's mercy, without Krishna's empowerment, there's no way I could do this amount of books. So I took up to $1,500 of books every day on Sankirtan and thinking, wow, there's no way that, all these books would go out. Sometimes practically all of them went out. Some days not many went out. But, Krishna was showing that he's the controller. And you have to put yourself in these circumstances, a situation where Krishna can actually reciprocate because he doesn't have the defect of impersonalism. He wants to see how do you want to, how much you want to depend on me, Krishna as a person. So that's there, and many devotees can go out of their comfort zone. You can just assess in your own life, am I comfortable with doing this and doing that for Krishna, or can I do something more for Krishna? What can I do more for Krishna? Because we become stuck in our comfort zone and thinking that, yep, I'm in control of the circumstance and situation. This is what I can do. But actually, Krishna, if he can see the sincerity in the devotee, he can empower us to do much more. Whatever service we may be doing in our Krishna consciousness. So I was also, because my brahmacharya ashram is moving currently, and I was digging out through my old stuff. I found this old magazine in 1997 by one German sannyasi, Bhakti Vaibhav Maharaj. And I remember I was reading this as a younger brahmachari, just getting some inspiration what Maharaj used to do. And I remember reading this, and this story really stuck out to me, because Maharaj is a real pioneer when it comes to book distribution in the 70s. I think this is 1976. He decided to do book distribution in places like Lebanon and Middle Eastern countries where there was lots of Christian and Muslim riots. So it was very, very, very dangerous environment to do book distribution. And some of the stories he details is just mind-blowing, amazing stories. Like he's fully Krishna, he's depending on Krishna in so many circumstances. Like we don't, have to risk our life. Of course, many great souls have in the past trying to preach Krishna consciousness, but it's very inspirational. One story, he was saying that he was distributing Arabic Ishupanishads in Lebanon, and he went into one 6-story building. He distributed 8 Ishupanishads, literally 20 meters. As soon as he walked out of the building just explodes, falls to pieces. Those just destroyed, And I was thinking, oh my God, what just happened there, And he said and when he was staying in different hotels in the Middle East, and while this this Muslim Christian riots were going, it was like normal. You would just see these like buildings just blow up. And he realized he didn't want to endanger his life. He just got out of that situation very quickly. Another story, he was distributing in the Middle East. He met one very interesting gentleman on the road. And he came across as very interested in Prabhupada's books. He owns a bookshop. I want Prabhupada's books in his bookshop. So he enters into the car thinking that they're going to go to the bookshop. But when Maharaj entered the car, there were 3 other big Muslims in there, and they all just drove him into the woods, into the forest, like several kilometers away from the city. And he was freaking out because none of them spoke to him. They're all just looking at him with evil eyes. What's this guy up to? So they drove, Maharaj up into the woods, a few kilometers away from the city, and they walked him into this hut in the middle of nowhere in the forest. No one spoke to him. And in that hut, there was a whole dozens of Muslims. They were actually Sufi Muslims who were like special fanatical branch of Muslims apparently. And they were all dressed in their robes. And then when he walked into the hut, he just saw one big hole in the ground. You just imagine what Maharaj was thinking on. Yeah, he was depending on Krishna. He's not the controller, So Maharaj looked at this big hole and he was thinking, maybe this is the end of me. So all the Muslims sat him down. They all sat down, and then maybe half a dozen Muslims all pulled out Ishupanishads. And they were all reading from the Ishupanishad. And the leader of the Muslim group looked at Maharaj and said, so, Allah has lotus feet? And then Maharaj just looked at the Muslim leader, and he was saying it, because of his preaching spirit, he responded, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. God is great, yes? Yes, Allah Akbar. God is great. Then Allah can have feet. And then immediately the Sufi leader got up. He opened his robe and saw this big knife, this big like curved knife sword on his belt. And all the other Muslims stood up and they all started going, Allah, 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 Allah. In their fanaticism. The leader pulled out the big sickle, the sword, And then all the Muslims that had the Ishupanishads threw all the Ishupanishads on the hole, like they were going to burn them. And Maharaj is freaking out. What do I do now? Instantly, he just bolted. He just ran out of the hut. He said he never ran faster in his life, calling out, Nishingadev. This is some amazing story. This is true story. No fabrication. Maharaj was explaining in this magazine. He was running like anything, shouting, Nishingadev, Nishingadev. Krishna, help me, save me. And there's dozens of Muslims with these swords were chasing him, down the forest as he was running. He didn't know where he was running. He was running back to the road. He saw this taxi out of nowhere. This taxi just drove by, and immediately he just stood in front of the middle of the road and waved his hands. City, get me out of here. He jumped in the taxi and he was saved. Incredible. So these are some of the stories. These are some of the ordeals that these great souls go through just to spread Krishna consciousness. And there's me, just doing books in Rotorua or wherever I am in Tapa. I mean, I'm trying to think how I can be more dependent on the mercy of the Lord. And in that dependency, you have to be detached because you don't know what's going to happen, isn't it? It comes with the dependency is detachment because you're no longer trying to control the situation and circumstance. You're just trying to really serve Krishna according to your best capacity and ability. And whatever comes, comes. So in some circumstances, I was selling Bhagavatam sets practically every other day. Some days I did practically, some days I didn't do so much, modest amount of books. But it's amazing that if we try and have the right mentality in entering devotional service, how blissful it becomes because it's our attachments that actually stop us from experiencing the susukam, the blissfulness of Krishna consciousness, the process of Krishna consciousness. It's our attachments that keep us suffering. So we have to somehow or other make progress to understanding the value of this sixth symptom because the whole process of Krishna consciousness is the process of Sharanagati, the process of surrender. And we're practicing to surrender to Krishna. It's not overnight. For some people, it's overnight, but we're practicing to accept what's favorable, reject what's unfavorable, to see Krishna as my protector, to be dependent on the Lord, to conform, to have no self-interest separate from the Lord, Atma Nikshepa, and develop humility. These are the 6 symptoms of surrender. And you'll see that this dependency is actually a very beautiful thing. In the material world, no one wants to be dependent. Oh, you have a codependent relationship with this person and that person. Sometimes it's regarded as like some kind of psychological problem. But we want to be dependent on Krishna. We're not dependent on some insignificant creature who can't reciprocate with your unlimited desires for love and reciprocation. We have to have at some point full trust and faith that Krishna will reciprocate with our endeavors to serve him. So this dependency in the Lord opens up so many incredible tastes and rasas. Another point that Srila Prabhupada explains in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, he says that dasya rasa, if you want to qualify yourself for dasya rasa, 2 things must be there. Number 1, you have to appreciate your subordinate position to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And number 2, and in that subordination, one is always thinking Krishna, I'm always depending on Krishna for Krishna's mercy. And when these 2 things are there simultaneously, an affection develops like that of a son to a father who's always been giving benedictions to the children. Amazing. All this in teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It's like this summarized condensed nectar, you can hear. So there's the Shanta Ras, when you just have this neutral appreciation of the Supreme Personality. There's no service. There's just this awe and reverential appreciation of the Lord. And then there's the Dasya Ras, where actually one feels dependent on the Lord and one appreciates the subordinate position. And therefore there's some affection there and there's service. So in order to get Dasya Rasa, you need to learn how to become dependent on Krishna. In order to get Dasya Rasa, you need to learn how to be appreciative of your subordination. Tell that to conditioned soul. Appreciate that you're subordinate. It's like, no, we want to be independent. We want to be controllers. But you're subordinate to God ultimately. And we know from the previous acharyas that Dasya Rasa is the cup by which all the other higher rasas flow. So Sakya Ras, Vatsalya, Madhurya Ras, they all have aspects of the servitude. So Prabhupada also explains this further in teachings of Lord Chaitanya, that in Sakya Rasa, although the devotee has a equal understanding, a quick equal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prabhupada explains that actually he maintains a great respect, still maintains a great respect for Krishna. An amazing thing happens in Vatsalya Ras, because no longer is, of course, the dependency between the devotee and Krishna is always there, but Prabhupada explains Krishna becomes dependent on the mercy of the devotee. And he gives the example of Mother Yashoda. And he even says, Mother Yashoda is saying to Krishna, eat this or you will die. Eat this now or you will die. You can read this just in the beginning of the book. And then Prabhupada explains that actually then the Lord becomes dependent on the bhakti or the devotional service of the devotee. He becomes dependent. Krishna becomes dependent on the devotee, on the strength of the devotee's devotion. What to speak of Madhurya Rasa, where the devotee's expression of bhakti is so valuable, so potent, that as we hear in the 10th canto of the Bhagavata, Pariham Niravidya Samyujam Sadhu Kritya Vidhayusha Pivaha Namabajan Tuvaja Geha Shinkala Samrichya Tatvas Patiyatu Sadhunaha. He says to the gopis, actually, I can't even repay you anymore for your spotless devotional service, even in one lifetime of Lord Brahma. Krishna becomes not just dependent on such potent devotional service, but he actually becomes addicted to this. Krishna wants the loving reciprocation of his topmost devotees in Braj. So in the material world, the dependency is seen as very, don't go there. I don't want to be dependent on anybody, dependent on you. No one wants to be dependent on some insignificant creature, who can't fulfill our desires. And we've only seen through so much suffering in relationships and material existence. But real dependency is perfected in the devotee's relationship with Krishna. And it opens up so many incredible tastes, colors, and vibrancy in terms of the devotee's internal dynamic in his or her devotional service. Anyone can practice to be dependent on the Supreme Personality of God, and therefore anyone can receive the mercy of Krishna. It's completely up to one's attitude in devotional service, how one applies themselves in devotional service. So these are some points that I've just, from my reading of teachings of Lord Chaitanya, I thought connected to these points that Prabhupada was making. This prayer of the residents of Jambudweep, it may seem very basic. Krishna is the supreme controller. Krishna cannot be seen. But if we understand the depths of these points that they're making, it can go deep. It can go really deep in terms of understanding the bhakti dynamics of how a devotee really feels if he or she understands Krishna as the supreme controller. God, if you're the supreme controller, then I am your whatever comes, fully dependent on you. How can I see Krishna? Through devotion, through love. So this takes working at. Bhakti requires working at, just like in any relationship in the material world, it takes a lot of work. So we want to reestablish our relationship ultimately with our Supreme Beloved, Shri Krishna. And it takes work. Krishna wants to see how much are you willing to go outside of your comfort zone to please me. And we can all be entitled for Krishna's unlimited mercy. Hare Krishna. So I'll stop. Perhaps any questions or comments? Hare Krishna. Mm, mm, I understand. To follow. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Yes. Exactly. It's called Vedic Varnashram. We don't have it. Yep. Carry on. Your question? Or are you just sharing your observation? Thank you very much for sharing your observation, Prabhu. I see this all the time, and I wonder where, what's going to happen to the world even in the next 50 years. Um, we don't have the bulwarks or foundations of a human civilization, which you nicely pointed out that in Vedic culture, dependency was there in the very beginning. The child would offer respect to mother, Guru Ma, you are my first teacher. Then he or she would offer respect to the father. You see, Vedic culture gives us the experience, but the serving uh, the interest of the family actually serves you better than serving your own selfish interest. Why is that? Because there's love. Serving the interest of your society serves you better than serving your own selfish interest. Serving the interest of the world serves you better than serving your own selfish interest. And ultimately, that's extended. Serving God will serve you more than serving your own selfish interest. And that samskara, that impression, was there at the beginning of childhood. Therefore, it was very easy to make that transition. Oh, sadhu comes into the door. Jai Shri Krishna. Surrender to Krishna. Because that trust, that mutual trust was there since the very beginning of youth. It is indeed a massive problem, huge problem. How we can overcome it, I don't know. You have some insight? We can only try. For those who grew up in somewhat of some kind of a family, a real family, um, they're becoming far and few and rare in this day and age, especially in the West. So naturally, relationships become the biggest. I mean, it's really a headache in Kali Yuga, so it makes even more of a headache because there's authority issues. And ultimately, we have the biggest issue with Krishna, who is the supreme authority, because there's no trust. No trust in Krishna means no trust in his system. Oh, I love you, Krishna. I trust you, Krishna, but why don't you trust my system? Why? Because a lot of us didn't grow up in that where the system was actually properly nurtured and cultured. We may have some remnant of that, especially in India and Eastern countries, Asian countries. So it remains the biggest problem. And thank you for sharing and emphasizing the problem. But we came to Kali Yuga. We chose to come into the Kali Yuga because we wanted to be independent and enjoy, thinking that we will enjoy separate from Krishna. But how wrong are we? In order to experience love, we need to experience dependency, even just within our own family. And it shouldn't be difficult then to transfer that trust to God ultimately. So that's why Vedic Varnashram was set up in such a way that you can transfer your attachment in the transcendence in a very natural way, organic way. So we need Varnashram, amongst other things. We need sane human beings. We just need people actually just to follow the four regular principles. That's just amazing if someone can do that in Kali Yuga. So what's my solution? What's my Why do I get the hell out of here? Don't stick around here. I know it's a very bad motivation and it's not pure devotional service, because if I was really pure, I'd be thinking, Krishna, birth after birth in Auckland. Doesn't matter anymore. Just give me service in New Barshan, or give me service in Auckland, or wherever I'm situated. That's my highest goal. No, I want the hell out of here. I want to get out. That's just where I'm at in my Krishna consciousness. It's my bhakti is tinged with liberation. If I can just be in the same planet with Krishna, the same opulence, I can be like, be awesome. I want to be with Krishna. But actually, you can be with Krishna right here and right now. It just depends on your state of consciousness. So at this stage, yeah, we don't want to stick around here. Kali Yuga will just get worse. And please distribute lots of books. Efficiently get out of this world as quickly as possible. Don't prolong your stay here. If anything, Krishna has given me a little mercy to see that I don't belong here. I don't want to be here. I don't. That's why I'm wearing the saffron. I want to get out. My Guru Maharaj told me personally, he said, "This is intelligent, but there's something more. There's something higher." So we aspire for the higher. At the same time, we also want to develop some intelligence. Hare Krishna, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanand.